folks, and welcome to Woodstock Regional Artists. I'm your host, Sal Miccio, coming to you from my home studio in West Hurley, New York, along with David Lax, our producer engineer at the controls in Studio A in Saugerties, New York. Tonight's guest is a musician, audio engineer, studio and audio visual designer, and consultant, Pete Robertson. Good evening, Pete. How you doing tonight?
Hey, guys. Nice to see everybody. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, my friend. So let's talk about your beginning of doing audio in 1985, and you played with a regional metal band in Endicott, New York.
But that was what really, led me to the career in audio. I just kind of happened to be that guy that, figured out how to hook up all of our guitar effects pedals. And, as we got bigger, all of a sudden, we're playing a little house party. I gotta figure out how to do sound on a little PA with a couple microphones, and it just kind of kept snowballing. And I realized how much I loved doing audio. It flowed nicely into the career I have now.
So you moved to Woodstock in 1990 and worked as a local sound engineer for most of the local studios. And you did sound live for Joyous Slate, Tinker Street, and Bearsville Theater, the big three in town at the time. Tell us about that.
That was really, for me, a really magical time. My parents had moved down here with IBM in the late 80s. And after visiting them down here quite often, I fell in love with the area. So once I started exploring the town of Woodstock, I met a lot of people down there. And in particular, Mike Birnbaum at Applehead built the first edition of Applehead Studios and subsequently built the second one that it's currently in. But that kind of started, the ball rolling for me doing sound locally. And at the time, Bearsville Theater and Dreamland were really, really hopping. So it was not a rare event to have world-class bands and musicians who were recording at these studios just want to come into town. And one of the first nights I walked into Tinker Street, I was walking down the street looking for some place to go sit and have a beer, and I heard Ozzy playing. I'm like, well, this place must have a cool jukebox. And I walk in the front door, and there's Ozzy and Zakk Wylde in this little tiny bar that holds about 50 people. And I kind of scratched my head for a few minutes, and people kind of explained, this happens all the time. Between Peter Perry's Joyous Lake at the time, Bearsville Theater was thriving. You get shows like Taj Mahal or Dr. John or things of that ilk. So that really helped me establish myself as a sound engineer.
That was great. Yeah. So you've been associated with quite a number of great bands here. Let me read them off. Dropkick Murphys, which is your current band that you're with, Coheed and Cambria, Rancid, the Bad Brains, Newfound Glory, Cannibal Corpse, 3, Kill Switch, Engage, and Hatebreed, and Unearthed. So Bad Brains, I remember them being around the studio for a while. Can you tell us a little something about working with them?
I had met them briefly late 80s in New York City. A couple of times they were doing a record down there in mid 80s. So I got to be very good friends with Dr. No, Gary Miller, and Daryl Jennifer. And they were getting ready to embark on a new record. The album was called Rise, with a new singer. We did all the demos and the recordings for a big record for them on Sony at the time. It was a lot of fun getting to work with a band like that. I was such a fan of them growing up. They were pioneers in the punk rock scene.
And again, 3. I know Josh and Joey were in that band. Who else was in that band at the time you were doing sound for them?
At the time, I've got a long history with the band 3. They are some of the nearest and dearest people to me. When we first started building the original Applehead studio, Jimmy Eppert and myself and Michael, and that was the original lineup, was Josh Eppert, Joey Eppert, and Chris Bittner.
Before we go any further, Pete, your the background is very interesting. Tell our folks where you are at the moment.
I do a lot of freelance audio and consulting. So there's a company in Saugerties. It's called TV Tech Managers. Another local gentleman named Kevin Hartman. Anybody who's been in the music scene in Woodstock or production probably knows Kevin. He's been around several years. Used to work for NBC and whatnot. But he's got a large shop out here in Saugerties. They do all television productions, special events, webcast, video, audio, anything down those lines. They've got a couple large trucks. One large video truck, and I'm currently sitting in their audio truck.
We mentioned Josh going with Coheed and Cambria, so I think it's time for us to play our first video, which is of Coheed and Cambria. It's a nice long video, so folks, sit back and enjoy Coheed and Cambria. So Pete, that was a great show there. You were the sound man for that show, weren't you? Not?
I was. That show was done at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. At the time, I was the production manager for the band, their live sound engineer, and I did all their live recording as well.
So you founded Woodstock Wire LLC in '94 and did studio and AV design for many clients, including Planet Hollywood, Hard Rock Cafe, Walter's Story Design Group, Ted Rodstein Technologies. And you built the Southeast Asia's largest recording studio in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in '94 with Ted Orr. That we definitely want to hear about.
At the time, I was working as a staff engineer at Navessa Studios in Woodstock. And we were installing a new soundboard in the studio, and we hired a husband and wife team to come in. They were system designers and integrators. And we worked in conjunction with each other, getting that studio together for Chris. And they worked for a bunch of different companies doing installs and design, and had asked me if I was interested and available in joining them on some projects. I had just picked up a Mix magazine and was looking at the cover story, and it was a big story about the studio Synchro Sound in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. no sooner, within 24 hours, I got a phone call from them saying, "Hey, look, we got this big studio project we're doing in Malaysia. Would you be interested?" I said, "It's funny enough. I just read about the article yesterday, and yeah, I'm definitely in." I was there about 2 weeks, and they realized they were a little bit shorthanded. You know, asked if I had any recommendations of people we could bring in, and a dear friend of mine, Ted Orr, was available and ready to go at the time. So I had Ted fly in. We spent about 2 months together in Kuala Lumpur building all the wiring and infrastructure for this massive studio. Yeah, so one of the great things that I've been very fortunate with is that, you know, with this career path, you know, it's afforded me to be able to travel the world. I got involved with Ted Rothstein and was doing a lot of Planet Hollywoods and Hard Rock cafes and Motown cafes. I mean, there was a big theme restaurant surge in that time period. So we built a Planet Hollywood in Tel Aviv, and we took a little jaunt one day. Some friends that we had made on the job site drove us up and went to the Dead Sea, and it was absolutely unbelievable. You know, it's impossible to submerge yourself in that water. The salt content is so high, your buoyancy is tenfold. Love it.
So now you are with a Dropkick Murphys, and I think what we'll do is we'll show a video of Dropkick Murphys, um, uh, and then talk about it on the other side. Here we go with Dropkick Murphys.
All right, Galicia! Your last chance to dance. Let's see what you got. I'm a sailor pig, and I lost my leg. Coming up the top sails, I lost my leg. What you got? I'm shipping up to Boston. Good night, Galicia! Thank you!
Pete, that was a nice video with a very large audience. Dropkick plays to a lot of large audiences, don't they?
We do. You know, in the States, we do anywhere from 1,000 to, you know, maybe 7,500 seat. We get to Europe and we're doing anywhere between 5,000 to 15,000 per night. And some of these festivals that we do during the summertime, we're playing to crowds upwards of, you know, 80 to 100,000 people.
And so you've been with Dropkick for 7 years.
He just happened to call me up one day and said, "Look, we're just doing this little 2-week run. Any chance you might be available? We don't have a sound guy right now." And about a month later, got a phone call from him and said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow night?" I said, I got no plans. I said, "What's going on?" He said, Dropkick Murphys are playing Game 6 of the World Series at Fenway tomorrow night, and the band has been asked to sing the national anthem. Can you come up and do sound for us? What a great organization. the Red Sox have been to the Dropkick Murphys, and through that, to the Crew as well. But what an experience going up there and doing that. And it just kind of snowballed. That was the last thing I did with them for that year. And they came back and asked me if I was available to do their traditional St. Patrick's Day tour, which is usually about a three-week tour, Northeast, Midwest. And they always end it with a solid week of shows in Boston at usually a House of Blues. And I did that for them. And their manager just came and cornered me in the dressing room one day and said, I've been instructed by the band to, do whatever it takes. I'm not allowed to take no for an answer. So what do we need? And it just worked out. And it's just been amazing. So there's been no need for me to leave. They allow me to pursue every other aspect of my career as long as there's no major conflicts. Dropkick is my first, they get first refusal of my time. Right. So it's just, again, Red Sox has been an amazing organization to the Dropkick Murphys. So they were invited to come and play on one of the floats. So we just had the entire band set up full electric on a giant flatbed trailer with a PA, and just, traveled the streets of Boston, playing to the crowds of the parade. And I mean, it's such a unique experience.
That's terrific. Well, speaking of Fenway Park, our next video is from Fenway Park, and it features Bruce Springsteen. So let's take a look at that video and enjoy it, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
You've been gracious enough to let us join you on stage with this one, so here we go, buddy, American land.
Land America, so many travel there.
I'm going now while I'm still young, my darling, meet me there.
Wish me luck, my lovely, I'll send for you when I can.
We'll make our home in the American land.
Over there, women wear silk and satin to their knees.
And children there, the sweets I hear are growing on the tree.
Gold comes rushing out the river straight into your hands.
You make your home in the American land.
There's diamonds in the sidewalk, there's gutters lined with song. Here I hear the beer flows with the faucets all night long. There's treasure for the taking for any working man who will make his home in the American land.
Come on!
To this island in the city of light and spire.
I wandered to the valley of red hot steel and fire.
We made the steel that built the cities from the sweat of our two hands.
We made our home in the American land.
There's diamonds in the sidewalk, there's gutters lined in song. Here I hear the beer flows and the faucets all night long. There's treasure for the taking for any hard-working man who will make his home in the American land. Big Nicholas, the Pasalskis, the Smiths, the Willies too.
The blacks, the Irish, Italians, the Germans, and the Jews.
They came across the water 1,000 miles from home.
Nothing in their bellies but a fire down below.
They died building the railroads, they worked the bones and skin.
They died to build the factories, names scattered in the wind.
They died to get here 100 years ago, they're still dying now. The hands that built the country were always trying to keep out. There's diamonds in the sidewalk, there's gutters lined in song. Here I hear the band flows, so the Boston's all night long. There's treasure for the taking for any hard-working man who will make his home in the American land. Make his home in the bless your heart. Thank you very much, Bruce Springsteen.
Thank you, boys.
Nice video, Fenway. Of course, there were nobody in the stands, but it was a great show there. And of course, with Bruce, it sort of added to the music. That was a benefit, wasn't it, Pete?
Yeah, the entire show was for charity. It was a very unique show. We were just really getting into the harsh realization of the pandemic, and most people realize our industry was one of the first to get shut down. It probably is going to be one of the last to come back. And Ken just wanted to try something a little different. So it was really a big endeavor with MLB and the Red Sox to sort of help them pioneer their safety and their health and safety guidelines to be able to do this. And there was a lot on the table for this. If we screwed this up, it could jeopardize baseball. So everybody was very diligent about the health and safety protocols for all of this and their social distancing and addressing how we all work. You have to stop and think about what's the safe way to move these cases from point A to point B while keeping socially distant, making sure that everything was sterilized and disinfected. How are we handling sound checks? And myself and our monitor engineer, how are we handling sound checking vocal microphones? Obviously, we don't want to speak into a musician's or an artist's microphone and then have them go up to it. And we want them to feel comfortable. We don't want to even have to have them worry that we've sang into their microphone and wiped it down with an alcohol swab. John and I each had our own microphone in our pocket, and when we went to test something, we used that microphone and nothing else to do it, to check all our lines and stuff. But man, what an event. Bruce Springsteen and his entire crew, such a great group of people to work with, and they raised a lot of money for charity fund.
Terrific. Yeah, terrific. So you provide engineering and production services to many broad-class clients such as MTV, Netflix, Viacom, TV tech managers. And one of your favorite shows was a Netflix show with David Letterman called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with Barack Obama. So tell us about that, Pete.
I'm actually getting goosebumps thinking about it. Everybody is familiar with the term starstruck. And when you meet people out in the world like that, overwhelmed is an understatement with this. Yeah, the show was amazing, and the premise of the show is the audience doesn't know who the guest is for the evening.
So, is there anything else you could tell us? Like any times you had some problems that you had to adjust on tour or whatever?
I don't think a lot of people realize some of the blood, sweat, and tears that go into some of these shows. We started our intro song, played our intro, and the first song started. And all of a sudden, somebody in the audience threw a full, probably a 32-ounce cup of beer that landed directly in the middle of the console.
Wow.
So I'm, by the time I just leaned over 2 feet to grab a towel, all the beer had disappeared and it had been absorbed inside the console. So now every fader and volume control and volume pot in the console just starts moving up and down on its own. So I muted the PA so I wouldn't risk any injury to anybody if the volume actually went through the roof or something. 2/3 of the console were soaked in beer. 1/3 of the console, which is only 8 channels, was still functioning. So I slowly, just kind of one by one, going through the touchscreens, kept reassigning all my channels to these 8 controllers, and then I would go to layer B, add another 8 inputs, go to layer C, add another 8. And by the end of the show, I'm mixing this entire show on 8 channels, and now they start to crap out on me. And this console has a touchscreen function as well. So by the end of the show, I had every module on the console unassigned, and I was mixing it with my finger on a 24-inch touchscreen monitor to get through the show. It's not uncommon for tech issues like that to happen out there. And I mean, they're absolute show enders. No way to prepare for these things. You just, you go through your motions. Shows where there's, tornadoes, there's hurricane, gale force winds and rain. You do the best you can and try and get through it. And the most important thing is everybody's safety, making sure that, lightning or anything like that, just getting everybody off stage, making sure people are protected. But yeah, there are problems that arise out there. And it's
terrific story. Thank you for that, Pete.
Yeah,
terrific story. So your company is called Woodstock Wire LLC. How can folks get in touch with you if they have to?
My email is fohpete@gmail.com. They're welcome to email me. I've been fortunate enough that I've been busy and have maintained my career without doing like a proper business social media page or a website. So really it's just email. I am on Facebook. Just search Pete Robertson and you'll find me, or search at Dropkick Murphys page and you'll find a link to me somewhere. But I do all facets of audio, video consulting, from, home studio, commercial studio. We do a lot of corporate events, a lot of television production and film production. So if anybody has any needs for any of that, feel free to reach me at any time, and I'd be glad to help accommodate in any way that I can.
Great. It's really been a pleasure having you, Pete. We've learned a lot about the industry, some great stories there, and some good music. So thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you to you guys, but also, just mention Ted Orr one time. I mean, he was like a brother to me. We did a lot of work together over the years as engineers in Woodstock and mixing his bands, and his passing was quite a shock. I just wanted to give his family a big shout out, that our thoughts and prayers are with them all, and we love them all. And Ted, we miss you, buddy. I can't thank you and David enough for what you're doing with this show. I think it's great getting our Hudson Valley talent out there and highlighted. Again, big thanks to both of you guys for everything you do for our community.
Our pleasure, and thank you again. Folks, next week we have a little bit of a change. On the 29th, we will have a roundtable discussion on Facebook's new rules and guidelines. About live streaming. And so you probably want to tune into that. If you are live streaming on Facebook, we're going to have a couple of noted folks who know the industry, and we'll have a roundtable discussion. And so join us on Tuesday for that. Until then, we want you to be safe out there and support your local artists in any way you can. Thank you, and good night.